What about Jesus? What can we say about Jesus? Well, the best place to start might be to assume that Jesus is a myth or folktale, not unlike Robin Hood or other legendary do-gooders. However, that becomes difficult when one realizes that most scholars and historians, even those who are not necessarily Christians, theists, or believers in the deity of Jesus, accept that a real man named Jesus lived in Judea, accrued followers, and gained notoriety as a teacher during the period around 30 AD. This man is accepted to be the historical person that we know as Jesus of the Bible. What may surprise you is that without ever cracking open a Bible or darkening the door of a church house, there is substantial evidence to corroborate the existence of Jesus from extra-biblical sources, writers in the ancient world where Jesus lived and died. Tacitus, the greatest Roman historian of that age, wrote of the sufferings and death of Christ inflicted by Pontius Pilate. Flavius Josephus wrote of Jesus' conduct, his followers, and his death. Julius Africanus wrote about the darkness that ensued at the time of Jesus' death. Pliny the Younger wrote of the followers of Christ who believed him to be God. Lucian, a Greek satirist, wrote of the Christians' belief in one who had been crucified for them, and even the Jewish Talmud speaks of the crucifixion of Jesus. There are other examples, but these should suffice to move Jesus from the realm of mythological and into the realm of historical for even the most skeptical. Beyond that, what can we say about Jesus? One might find it interesting to consider that the Old Testament speaks of Jesus. The Old Testament, the history of the Hebrew people, is absolutely known to have existed in its complete form 400 years before Jesus' birth. And we're not talking about a handful of prophecies, but over 350 prophecies regarding Jesus' lineage, his coming, his birth, his birthplace, his miracles, his ministry, his rejection, and his crucifixion. 350 prophecies, rich in detail and coverage, written a minimum of 400 years before the one man who fulfilled them all, Jesus. So what about Jesus? Historians from his own time period verify his existence and that his followers believed him to be something more than human. Prophets writing 400 years or more before his birth seem to have a strange knack for presupposing criteria by which he could be recognized and identified. When one takes into account the mathematical odds of one person fulfilling any 8 prophecies from the Old Testament, the odds are 1 in 100 quadrillion. It seems incumbent upon the open mind that not only must Jesus have existed as per historical accounts, but that he must have been exceptional in consideration of prophetic accounts. What if we consider first-hand accounts? What if we consider those who knew Jesus? Jesus' disciples. Not what they said, and not what the scriptures report to us, but what they did, specifically how they lived, and most of all how they died. Historically speaking, the disciples of Jesus lived lives of sacrifice, passing what they had learned from Jesus on to their own disciples. They taught charity, service, unity, and the love of Jesus. In fact, we can read the writings of the young men whom they taught, and whom were taught by them, who went on to become church fathers such as Polycarp, Ignatius, Chrysostom, Tertullian, Augustine. But perhaps the greatest evidence that not only was Jesus a real man but also the real God is not found in histories or prophecies or teachings, but in the deaths of the disciples. Jesus' disciples died horrific deaths, beaten, beheaded, boiled in oil, speared, stoned, crucified. They might easily have escaped such an awful demise had they only recanted their testimony regarding Jesus. And why not? Why be murdered painfully and brutally rather than simply confess the whole scam? Even if it wasn't a scam, why not avoid such a cruel death at any cost? What was there to gain? Unless, of course, they had seen something that convinced them there was life beyond the death of their human bodies. Something that changed their hearts and minds. Maybe they had met someone who showed them that not only did he have the power to do the miraculous, he could actually rise victoriously over the power of death. And so they met death not fearing the loss of this world, but expectantly ready to meet the next. Not just because they had seen the works of Jesus and heard the teachings of Jesus, not because they thought he was merely a good person or a wise teacher. They had scattered as he was murdered, but they had seen him rise again, the Lord of life and the King of kings. So if historians can convince us Jesus existed, and prophecy can suggest that he was an extraordinary person, the willingness of the disciples to face death in the name of Jesus should demonstrate to us that they knew he was something far greater even than the power of death. They knew he was the resurrection and the life, their God incarnate.